Hi friends, today we're going to be looking at artwork done by the famous pop artist Wayne Thiebaud. Wayne Thiebaud was a famous pop artist in the 60s known for his sweet treat paintings. A lot of his paintings consisted of cakes and ice creams. Why would an artist choose to paint cakes and ice creams? Well, back then, that was a thing that artists were doing. They were picking everyday objects that people normally would see around them and finding ways to make them stand out and be interesting in the artwork. How do you think Wayne Thiebaud made these cupcakes interesting? What are some things he added? Did you notice all the colors and the shadows and on the cupcake tins that stand out from the reflections? Did you also notice the repetition? Today we're going to be making some cupcakes in honor of Wayne Thiebaud's creative style and how he took everyday objects and made them stand out. You're going to start out with a Sharpie. You can use a black crayon and just push heavy on that. You can start out with a pencil first. If you decide to just use a regular black marker at home, if you have a washable marker that you're using, you want to avoid doing watercolor painting in the background, which is what I did in my example. So think about the tools you have at home and just do the best with what you have if you have to change it up. So what we're going to do first is start with the cupcake line of our cupcakes. So you're going to make sure that your paper is portrait style. And a little bit above the bottom of the page, you're going to do a horizontal line. Off of that, we're going to do some diagonal lines that go towards the sides of the paper. So I'm going to do one here, and it wants to go about that far, and then one on this side, and let's try to make them the same length. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is some lines in here. I'm going to try to make them as equal as I can, but if they don't fit in there perfectly, that's fine. So these are straight lines. You're going to do about 4 to 5. Okay. Now what we're going to do is a point that connects to each of these. It's like an upside down V. So I'm going to go one here. And you're going to have them be a little off. That's okay. Now up here, we're going to start to do the frosting. So this is going to be a really loose waving line that connects from one end to the other end of your cupcake tin. So I'm just going to make one that connects. And now the next one needs to be a little smaller, so that's going to come in. And then the top one kind of reminds me of a Hershey kiss, so this one also comes in, but it's going to come to a little point. So what I do is I start inwards, I go up, and then I start to go in, but then I swerve a little bit. After I've come up to a point, I come back down and I just swirl it back in there. Alright, no two cupcakes are going to look the same. Some might have more frosting, some might not. If you want to have a cherry, you could do a circle, stem, leaf, any other, maybe you want to have on your cupcake like a birthday candle or something. I don't know. Don't do any of the sprinkles and things like that because we're going to do that later. What I do want to add is a table. So I'm going to do a line behind that cupcake tin on both sides and try to line them up equally. Okay, so we're going to be creating some shadows in our cupcakes. You want to get a blue crayon because remember we use blue when we're creating shadows, okay? One side of your cupcake is going to have your shadows. So you're going to come in about a quarter of the way on one side on each piece of your frosting very lightly with that blue. So I'm going to start at my big guy here. I'm pushing really light and I'm really only coming in like a quarter of the way, okay? And they can just be simple straight lines. Alrighty. If I even wanted to do some on my cherry, I could. Or even down here in my cupcake tin so that all parts of that have a shadow. Now I'm going to do shadow on the table. So you're going to have a shadow that comes out like this on the same side. It has to match your shadow side of your cupcake. And then you can even have a little fine line that goes under the cupcake. Alrighty. So that's my shadow. Now we're going to talk about values. And values are your lights to darks with your colors. There's many ways to create a value with color. we're going to talk about how to do that with the pressure of a crayon, okay? So if I push really hard on my crayon, what's going to happen is I'm going to get a dark value. However, if I push really light, that's going to get me a light value. So we're going to be alternating, creating a pattern with values in our crayon. This works too with colored pencils. It won't really work with markers. There's a different technique you need to use with markers, but if you have colored pencils at home, you can do this. I'm going to start with this one, and I need to decide if I'm going to do a dark or light value. I'm going to do a dark, so what I'm going to do is outline that first section. And I'm going to push hard, filling it in. Now, if you hold your crayon closer to the bottom, you're not going to break it. If you hold it in the middle, when you're pressing hard, you're going to break it. So notice, these colors are nice, opaque, okay? They're really solid and heavy, and it's a dark value. Now in this one, I'm going to make sure I push really light, and what I'm going to get is a transparent color, which is also a light value. So when you're doing this step, you want to still outline, and you want to push so light that you're barely touching the paper, because you can always make it darker, but we can't go back in and make it lighter. All right, there's my light value. Now I need to alternate back to a dark value. So I'm going to keep making those patterns and experimenting with pressure and how hard I'm pushing with that crayon to create some different values.
Remember, friends, even with the light values, you want to make sure you're going on top a few times so that you're able to cover all the white areas.
All right, that's looking good. I got my light values and my dark values. Now I'm going to go in and start to add some color into my frosting. If I want to leave the frosting white, I can. I like to do just a light layer of color. When you go in with this, stay out of the shadow areas. I'm just going to go in with a very light amount of pressure. So a light value, I guess you could call it, of orange. You can use what you want. Why we're not pushing too hard on the crayon for the frosting is because typically frosting is very light looking. But we also want to be able to color some sprinkles on top of this. So if we push too heavy, we won't be able to color on top of it. All right, I've got my frosting filled in. Now I want to go in and push hard, so a dark value, with my crayon and do some different shapes and designs. All right, friends, you might have noticed the bottom of my cupcake tin is a different color. That's because I went to film my cupcake project and realized it wasn't filming. So we're going to leave off where I was in my drawing on this one. Now that we have a light valued layer of color on my frosting, I'm going to go in and push hard with my crayons and add some details. You can do different shapes for your details to look like different shaped sprinkles. Or you can keep it simple and do the same throughout the whole thing. I'm going to just do the same throughout the whole thing. I'm going to go in, push hard on my crayon because I pushed light. With that frosting layer, I'm able to color on top. So go ahead, friends, add any details you want to look like sprinkles on top of your cupcake frosting. All right, that's looking really good. I'm now going to go in and do the background. You can choose any material you want for the background. If you want to use the side of a crayon and gently rub that crayon on the side, that will give you a nice light crayon layer. If you have paint and want to paint in here, that's fine. I'm going to show you how to paint with washable markers. So those of you who have washable markers at home, maybe you don't have watercolor paint. What you're going to use is washable marker, some water, and a paintbrush. Okay, so first thing you're going to do, pick two colors, and in your background, you're just going to go in and do some scribbled lines on the negative space or the background behind your cupcake. Now these have to be washable or this trick does not work. Now take my paintbrush with a little bit of water. Be careful with the water, friends. A lot of us don't have heavy paper at home, so If we go in too much with the water, it's going to cause the paper to tear or get a hole in it. We also want to push very light on that paintbrush, which are things that we've learned about this year, so you should be good at it. So now that I've gone in and I've added that marker, what's happening is the water is pulling the pigment from the marker and making it look like watercolor. All right, friends, that's looking good. So you have your shadows, you learned about your values. Again, no two cupcakes are gonna look alike. As you can see, these 3 cupcakes I made, they all look very different. So that's it for that, my friends. Feel free to share this with me in my emails.